You look at the financial headlines, maybe the way things are going, and this question just pops up, right? How do you actually protect the wealth you've worked so hard for?
Mm,
Especially for you, someone who wants to get the real story, understand what's happening without wading through, all the noise. We've got something pretty interesting today.
absolutely. We're going to take a deep dive into some, well, pretty significant shifts happening with gold and silver rules
Yeah.
at the state level.
Right, and sort of how the Federal Reserve might be looking at this whole thing.
Exactly. And we've got some great insights here, drawing from the work of J.P. Cortez, who's the executive director for the Sound Money Defense League. He's really deep in these issues.
Okay.
So our mission today, let's call it that,
Hmm.
is really straightforward. Get a clear picture of these recent legal changes around gold and silver.
And understand the impact.
Yeah, what they might mean
Yeah.
and what it tells us about this bigger idea of, sound money.
Okay, let's dive in then. It seems 2025 has been a particularly big year so far for the sound money movement.
It really has. We're talking about a pretty compressed time frame, too, like the last 2.5 months or so. Late February to early May, roughly.
And what kinds of laws are we actually seeing passed?
Well, it's kind of a mix, which is interesting. A big one is just getting rid of state taxes on precious metals, sales tax, capital gains tax.
Makes sense. Less friction.
Exactly. Then you have states explicitly reaffirming gold and silver as constitutional legal tender, which is, well, a statement in itself.
A nod to the Constitution.
Right. And generally just removing hurdles and making it easier for people to buy, sell, use gold and silver if they choose to. Some people are even sort of voluntarily adopting their own gold standard.
Huh. Okay, that's quite a range. Can you give us some concrete examples? Which states are doing this?
Sure. Wyoming is a great one. They actually passed a bill setting up a physical gold reserve.
A state gold reserve?
Yeah, investing $10 million in physical gold, stored right there in Wyoming. They're framing it as an inflation hedge, against dollar assets that aren't really yielding much.
Wow. Okay, that's definitely a state saying something. What about others?
Idaho's been very active too. They just eliminated the state capital gains tax on precious metals.
Okay, and didn't they already get rid of the sales tax?
They did, yeah, years ago. So now, basically, there's zero state-level tax friction in Idaho if you want to use gold and silver like money. Buy it tax-free, sell it later if it appreciates, no state capital gains.
So they're really paving the way for voluntary use.
Pretty much, they're saying, go ahead, we won't penalize you for using this form of money.
Interesting. Any other moves from Idaho?
Yes, they also formally reaffirmed gold and silver as constitutional money. They specifically cited Article 1, Section 10 of the U.S. Constitution. The part that says states can only make gold and silver tender for debt payments.
Right, that specific clause.
And Alabama did something similar, reaffirming gold and silver as legal tender there, too.
J.P. Cortez called this a monetary renaissance, or revitalization. That's a strong way to put it.
It is. It suggests rethinking money itself, doesn't it? Getting back to something non-political, scarce, something that doesn't carry that counterparty risk, like gold and silver.
Something tangible.
Exactly. It feels like a push towards something maybe more stable, less dependent on, central bank decisions.
Okay, so these changes clearly help people who already hold gold or silver, especially in those states. But you mentioned the Sound Money Index earlier. What's that about?
Right. The Sound Money Index. It's something the Sound Money Defense League puts out every year since about 2018.
And it ranks the states.
Yeah, all 50 states.
Hmm.
Based on how friendly their laws are towards sound money principles, taxes, regulations, reaffirmations, things like that, it gives you a snapshot of which states are, let's say, more welcoming to gold and silver.
And this actually has an effect. It's not just a list.
Oh, definitely. We hear anecdotes, stories about mints, precious metals dealers actually moving their operations.
Really, to states that score higher.
Yeah, because the barriers are lower and the state is sending a clear message that they view gold and silver positively, maybe even as money. It makes a difference for those businesses.
And presumably for related industries too, like mining.
Absolutely. It signals a supportive environment.
So why are some states jumping on board with this and maybe others aren't? What makes a state receptive?
That's a key question. Part of it seems to be just basic education.
Education for politicians.
Yeah. I mean, think about it. There are nearly 8,000 state legislators nationwide. Many of them probably haven't really dug into sound money concepts before. It might not be on their radar.
So just unfamiliarity with the ideas.
Now, this seems to be a factor. And then there's the perceived financial hit. You say remove taxes, and the first reaction might be, oh, we'll lose revenue.
Without seeing the potential upside.
Right. Without considering that making it easier to use sound money might actually attract investment, boost economic activity in other ways. It takes some explaining.
Okay, that makes sense. Now, the big player in the room, the Federal Reserve. You hinted they might not love these state actions. Can they actually do anything to stop them?
Well, here's the interesting part. Direct power. Surprisingly little, at least regarding these specific state tax and tender laws.
Really?
Yeah, how states tax goods, or what they recognize under their own interpretation of that constitutional clause that's largely state jurisdiction. The Fed obviously controls broader monetary policy, the dollar itself, but these specific state actions are mostly outside their direct reach.
So states have a fair bit of autonomy here.
In this specific area, yes. But, and this is important, the Feds still set the overall environment, and states themselves can create barriers beyond taxes.
Like heavy regulations.
Exactly. Think about regulations on dealers. That Ohio example J.P. Cortez gave was quite something.
Yeah, remind us about that. It sounded pretty intense.
Right. In Ohio, apparently, dealers have to collect a ton of personal information, name, address, description, thumbprint, maybe even if you're just selling, say, a single Canadian Maple Leaf coin.
For just one coin.
Seems so. And then they have to upload all that data daily to a police database.
Wow. That feels like a major privacy issue for just a regular person wanting to buy or sell a bit of gold or silver.
Absolutely. It's incredibly intrusive. And it definitely discourages people, right? It creates a chilling effect. So it's not just taxes. These kinds of regulations can be a huge disincentive.
So hurdles can come in different forms.
Precisely. Now, moving beyond just taxes and regs, JP brought up something recent in Spain. He saw it as a real wake-up call.
Right, the blackout story, where people couldn't get cash.
Exactly. Early May 2025, nationwide power outage in Spain. ATMs down. No cash access for many.
Okay.
And then right around the same time, Spain brings in these super strict controls on cash withdrawals.
What kind of controls?
You now have to notify the tax authorities if you want to withdraw $3,000 or more. And if it's $100,000 more, you need to give them 72 hours notice.
72 hours to get your own money.
Yep. And if you don't comply, fines can be huge, like up to $150,000.
That's incredible. Talk about controlling access to cash.
Yeah, it really is. And JP drew a line from that to the kind of tracking we already see. AML, KYC rules here in the U.S. It's part of a trend, he thinks.
A trend towards keeping money on the, what did he call them, approved rails.
Yeah, keeping everything within the official trackable financial system. And this whole Spain situation, especially the blackout part, really highlights what he called the folly of relying purely on digital systems, including maybe CBDCs.
Central bank digital currencies, because if the power goes out,
Your digital money is gone, or at least inaccessible. The Spanish blackout showed that vulnerability starkly.
it makes you appreciate having something tangible, doesn't it? Something
Yeah.
outside that digital system.
Absolutely. Money, fundamentally, is how we communicate value, express our wants. If that system goes down or gets heavily controlled, well, it's a problem. Gold and silver, being physical, offer that alternative, that resilience.
And with CBDCs, there's also the concern about things like negative interest rates, right?
Yeah.
Easier to impose digitally.
That's a major concern. A CBDC could allow a central bank to directly penalize saving by imposing negative rates, something much harder to do with physical cash or gold. Sound money, physical sound money, historically just provides that honest measure, resists that kind of manipulation.
So the million-dollar question, I guess, could what happened in Spain, that kind of blackout plus control scenario, happen here? Should listeners be worried about that?
JP's take is, yes, it's absolutely possible. It's a real risk. Think about how much of our money is already just digital entries.
Ledger balances, basically.
Right. And every digital dollar in a bank account carries counterparty risk. What if the bank has trouble? He also pointed back to the U.S. founders.
Their view on paper money.
Yeah, they were deeply skeptical of fiat currency. They saw it as unstable, prone to abuse, almost like a lottery for people's property. That's why they focused on gold and silver in the Constitution.
A very different perspective than today.
Very different. And looking globally now, he sees the current economy, both U.S. and global, as heavily reliant on credit, maybe with a lot of malinvestment underneath that needs to unwind eventually.
And other countries are noticing.
It seems so.
Yeah.
You see countries, BRICS nations and others, increasingly accumulating gold. It looks like a global shift, a coalescing around tangible assets like gold and silver again.
Okay, so that brings us to the idea of, well, you hear it a lot from freedom-minded folks. And the Fed. Even figures like Trump, Elon Musk have talked about the Fed recently. Is that the ultimate answer here?
It's a popular idea for sure. And JP acknowledged, look, ending the Fed might have benefits, but it's not the real end goal,
What is them?
restoring sound money itself. Because just swapping the Fed for some other government body controlling money, that doesn't fix the underlying problems.
Like government overspending.
It deficit. Exactly. Those incentives to inflate the currency away would likely still be there, regardless of who's nominally in charge. The real key, in his view,
Yeah.
is for the government to just, well, to get the hell out of the way when it comes to gold and silver. Let them be money again. They've been money for millennia, with or without government permission.
Just remove the barriers and let people choose.
That seems to be the core idea. Stop taxing it, stop regulating it into oblivion, just let it compete fairly.
Some really powerful points to think about. Thanks for breaking all that down for us.
My pleasure. Glad to do it.
And for you, listening in, we really hope this deep dive has shed some light on these state-level reforms, maybe highlighted some potential vulnerabilities in the system shown by events like those in Spain, and just reinforced the enduring case for sound money.
Yeah, and as these state actions maybe start to build momentum, it really leaves you with a final thought, doesn't it? If this trend continues, what could the future of money look like? And maybe more importantly, what steps might you personally consider to ensure your own financial security in that kind of shifting landscape? Something definitely worth mulling over.